The problem with social democracy is that in order for capitalists to make good profits under this arrangement, where they pay their workers...
Best way to convince a conservative is to describe communism and socialism, but without the recognizable terminology. Then once they agree that all the concepts you've presented is a good idea, then you break out the communism, socialism reveal. It's so funny. Yeah. Like, it's a big club and you're not in it. Right? That's the George Carlin line. It's a bunch of rich, elitist fucks playing golf 4 days a week, never worked a real day in their life. You know, they're all trust fund Andes who like got their Ivy League education from their parents' legacy admission, the real affirmative action, that are all buying politicians, starting think tanks and NGOs to lobby the government to do things that directly operate against your interests as a worker. They keep you from increasing the minimum wage, and keep in mind that, you know, majority of people who are working the minimum wage are over the age of 35. Most people who have disabilities with mobility are working in customer service. You know, that's where like all of our agricultural industry is propped up not only by government subsidies, but the labor that's producing in our agricultural industry is majority immigrant labor. 20,000 kids die in agricultural farms that are all immigrant children, underage. Child labor is still happening. We got the most incarcerated people, and it does nothing for us to continue just having people go through a cycle of homelessness, abject poverty, and into the incarceration state. The only people it helps is fucking Coca-Cola, first of all, and the textile industry. Because guess who's going to be picking all that fucking cotton in Louisiana? Like, you're tired of seeing like litter all over your streets of your small town. Well, guess who's going to be picking that up? It's not going to be sanitation, because that would mean government jobs. That would mean increased funding into the sanitation sector of your town, instead of it going to the police, so they can get more equipment that they don't need because they're not solving crimes, because they're not meant to solve crimes. Like, all of that. Like, I just described all leftist principles, from like public works to infrastructure to education to fucking rehabilitation, from like drug addiction to like how you literally stay safe in your community at night. And guess what it's all done for? Profit. We all know that fucking, you know, like I was saying, my sociology teacher would say, it's all about money. And it's not George Soros who's making all these things happen so that George Soros can sow chaos in the West. It's so people like George Soros, billionaires, can make a quick buck off of you for private profit. Capitalism. That's it. But people don't want to let go of that. They don't want to say like, oh, yep, you know what? The system we have is fundamentally flawed. There's a transitionary period that we can go through where we're like moving, like people siphoning money off of workers and all that shit. Shit, not true, brother. Like, you can still have capitalism within your lifetime. We're not going to do communism within your lifetime, dude. If you were born before 1999, okay, let's say if you were born before the new millennium, you're not going to see communism, okay? Even if there's a transitionary state, you're not going to see it. You're going to be long dead before there's like a global socialist economy. You're going to be long dead, boomers and Gen Xers. So stop bitching, okay? And that doesn't mean that like the Gen X and like elder millennial and the boomers wouldn't see like a robust social democratic society with high-speed rail, universal health care, universal education, like a housing first policy. It doesn't mean you can't see that in your lifetime. It doesn't mean you can't enjoy those things that we all like drool over, like Trussy. It just means that that finish line, that shade, we have to plant the trees for. That's all it means. We want people to sit in some nice cozy shade. We need to plant trees. But I want to seize the means of production. September 2022, the international poverty line is being updated from $1 to $2.15 per person per day. What is the new poverty line? And based on this new measure, how many people are living in extreme poverty in the world? The new international poverty line is 215 using 2017 prices. Okay, here's the thing. Extreme poverty is not where the line needs to be. Half of America makes 30,000 or less, okay? Which is like where the poverty line in America is at, what we call the poverty line, is more than half of that. Sorry. It's not like it's 15. No. 18. Half the country making 30,000 or less. We all know the stats, you know? You can't afford a $400 medical emergency bill, living paycheck to paycheck, you know, whatever the percentages are of all these, doesn't matter. Extreme poverty should not be what we're trying to eliminate. We should be trying to eliminate poverty. Yeah, the average is not a representation. The mode is the representation. We think like, mean, median, mode, average, right? The mode is the number because that is the gap between the wealthiest and the poorest. Right? It's not the UN poverty line we use. We use the one by the HHS, Health and Human Services. Yeah, and it's not accurate. It doesn't represent what living above the poverty line, but in between that and the average looks like, what the actual conditions of that are. You can be making $25,000 a year, but you're not kicking it, okay? You're not comfortable. You don't have an existence that is decent. You don't have dignity in your work or in your life. You don't have leisure. You don't have the ability to live. You have a schedule. Even using $2 a day, there's still 0.34% of Americans below that, and it's still like 150,000 people. Yeah. I'm going to argue it's not just a blind lust for the profit motive. People engage with the profit motive because they're seeking the currency they need for survival in our society. Their motives or intent isn't just line go up. It's a line go up so that my kid has intergenerational wealth and I can buy a third vacation home. Whether they need that third vacation home is questionable, but they're engaging in capitalism. Not just the love for the love of capitalism. Profit motive is part of it, but it's not the single essential motive or incentive. It's security. The more money you have, the more secure you are. The more money you have, the more you're able to ensure that security, whatever that looks like. Actual like insurance, actual like asset protections, but also like lobbying for legislation that would further protect that security. That's what it is.
Like an upcoming set of nationalizations, minimum wage increases, a shortening of the work week, more holidays, public health care, or anything else that makes life better for everyone but makes big companies less money. Capital just sits it out and sends the economy into a tailspin.
And because of like the global financialization, that flight isn't 100% preventable through like legislation. Let's say there's like a, you know, we'll call it a soft A authoritarian approach to companies like, let's say, ExxonMobil, who, Louisiana says, fuck you, ExxonMobil. The amount of money that you are making through the property and the production in Cancer Alley in Louisiana is untenable and is not actually going into the community because of ITEP exemptions. So we're taking those away from you, and you're going to start paying your fair share. And Exxon's like, okay, well, I guess we'll just go to like Omaha and do our production there, you know, or Missouri along the Mississippi River. That way we can still use the same trade routes. And Louisiana said, fuck you, we're going to seize all of your money because you're producing it here, right? Fuck it. Let's say they had the power to do that. Because of global financialization, those assets and that market capture that ExxonMobil has isn't wholly in Louisiana or even like America, right? It's in like Swiss banks. It's in fucking banks in Argentina. People in like the higher echelons at like the shareholders like have their assets all over the fucking place. It's in crypto. It's in different like countries' currencies. It's in other banks in like China and like Ireland and shit. Give Grem the Trizzy he deserves. They should do that with Avondale. It gave so many people lung cancer. If the mechanisms of nationalization were adequate, the threat that we all understand is there, but somehow justify and rationalize of like, oh, if you increase the minimum wage, companies will go somewhere else. Well, the company didn't go anywhere. The capital did. That's what the dynamic is. Without the workers in that factory, in that ice cream shop, whatever it is, without the workers, it's just an empty building. The capitalist is not going to make all the widgets and like the ice cream cones, right? They're not going to do that. They're a capitalist. They don't do that. Unless there are proper barriers put into place where that capital can't just fuck off, then they will fuck off for cheaper labor. The only thing the minimum wage means is that companies are required to pay you a certain amount, because if they weren't, they would pay you less. That's all it means. There has to be some kind of barrier to say like, you're going to move GMC. You're going to move your factory to Mexico. You're going to move all your money to Mexico, and you're going to produce the Chevy Blazer there. Interesting. How about no? And since you feel so brazen to just abandon all of these people who produce that wealth, it's theirs now, right? There has to be like something there. Call it authoritarian, call it George Orlando 1965, Nintendo Switch, Animal Crossing, whatever you want to call it. That is what's necessary.